All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm already seeing some people come in. We're just going to give it a minute or two to let people get into the webinar, and then we'll get started. While we're waiting, if you would like to go into the chat and you can put your name and what institution you're affiliated with and your title uh, and maybe also put down what course you're teaching or designing. Still have people coming in. We'll get started here in just a minute. And while we're still waiting, I'm going to put in chat a link to our Padlet. So we'll have some opportunity there for you to participate in the conversation, share ideas within the Padlet. We'll also have Eric here monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions or comments that come up during the webinar, make sure you can go in there. You see some people here, Marcy, Tracy. Give it just another minute or so here. Put that link up again just in case anybody misses it. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I want to thank everyone for joining us today on our webinar. This is Harmonize's teaching communication courses online. It's all about collaboration, interaction, and activity within your classes. We've got a great group with us today. First, I want to introduce Eric, who is a part of our Harmonize support team. He'll be monitoring the chat, so if any questions come up, he may jump in and throw one of the panelists a question. So if you've got something, make sure you put that in chat. With this, let me introduce myself real quick. I'm David Green. I'm an account executive at Harmonize and the host for the webinar today. But the main stars of our webinar today are our panelists. We have Tanya Allred at New Mexico State University, and she is a professor of communications. We also have Kelly Marcus, who is the instructional design and faculty trainer at the Iowa Community College online consortium. And we have a surprise guest. Mitch Cantor was not on the list, but gave an amazing presentation at a recent conference, and it was all about communications, and we snagged him into this webinar so he could present his ideas as well. He is a professor of communications as well at Mercer County Community College. So thank you all for being here. Again, I've put up the Padlet, so I do encourage everyone to take a moment to kind of click that link and go in. We've got a couple of areas for you to submit ideas. If you've got instruction ideas of how to create instructions for your class that you want to share with other people, discussion ideas, assignment ideas. We also have some links for those of you who are currently using Harmonize. I've also put up a place in the Padlet feature requests. We actually really do listen, and Eric can verify, we really do listen to our users, and when they have a suggestion of something that we should look to develop, we do take that to heart. Also, if you participate in the Padlet, we would love to reward some of you with some Starbucks gift cards. So we'll randomly draw some names for winners at the end of the webinar for anyone who goes in and contributes to some ideas there. Make sure if you put something in there, make sure you put your name and also your email into the Padlet, just to make sure that we get your information in there. I put that link in there one more time for you, Tracy. It's right there. Hopefully you can see that. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So today's conversation is going to be all about public speaking communication courses and how to really get students engaged and interacting. Oh, Eric, can you see that link?
It's just open to hosts and panelists right now.
Right, you might want to switch to everyone.
That is my bad. There we go, everyone. My bad. Okay, everyone should see that now. So today's webinar all about communication public speaking classes and understanding how to get the students to collaborate together, to interact together, and to share those ideas. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. I went in and created some demo samples of what our panelists are doing. There's the Padlet for you. And so we've got some great examples here. I wanted to start with Kelly, if that's okay with you, just to talk a little bit about what you're doing as far as in your public speaking class, how you're using Harmonize, but more specifically, what are you doing to get those students engaged in the classroom? I think you might be on mute, Kelly. Oh.
I forgot about that. I need to ask you a quick question because I can't remember from our outline. Is this where you want me to mention how I do polls, or are we doing that later?
Doing it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I teach solely online. I think I need to mention that. So for the consortium, I usually teach, several online. I teach composition and speech, and I like to do a lot of peer review. I just think it's valuable. And one of the things that I'll do with our speeches is I like to break them down into chunks, little small group activities. And so I've noticed that a lot of my students are not comfortable sharing their speeches out with the whole group at first. And so what I like is to break students down into groups. And so what I'll do is I'll say, okay, we're just going to do the first, I don't know, the intro. We're going to do your intro. We're going to break down into groups. I'm going to do a peer review on just your intro. And we're going to look for these 5 points. We're going to share them together. And I'm sorry, a little dog just came to see me in my office. I wasn't expecting that. Hi, everybody. There's a little dog here. And so that's what I've created to get some look back and forth. And depending upon the size of my class, sometimes these little groups are 5 people, 6 people, and it's just not as frightening. If I did it in a class of 30 and everybody's videos are out there, it's like, go comment on 1 or 2 people and there's 30 people. Some people are just, the nerves will hit them right away, just when they make that video to pop in there to think, oh my gosh, is anyone going to look at my video? Are they going to pass over me? Are they going to look at my face and see, oh, I don't want to look at that one, But in the group itself, if there's only 4 or 5, that feeling, I think, goes away. So I just give them one little section of their speech. We're just going to work on the hook, the engaging part. We're going to do 1 minute of it. They're in this group section, and then they have to pick apart, the rubric part. I give them a rubric to analyze. Then they go back and forth and start to have a discussion. Because I give different milestone dates then that they can talk to each other throughout the week about this speech. So it's like, okay, maybe milestone 1 is their post. Milestone 2 is, 3 things they noticed about their friend or their colleague, or, whatever we're going to call everybody in the class that they thought were great, and then milestone 3 is, okay, what do you think they could improve, or things like that. Also reactions. And so throughout the week, it's not just 1 or 2 things. And then the final thing, they have to upload another video, a final video that is a new version in that group of the beginning, of what they originally did. And then another comment from their friends, hey, look what you did. This is different. I like it. I like that you took a reflection. I like what you did, took our comments. And so it's just back and forth all week. And you can accomplish that in a group of 4 people, a group of 5 people, and you're willing to do the work more so than a group of 30 of 1 or 2 comments of hey, I liked it. It was good. This and this. So that's why I've set up this. I've used the groups. They're more willing to work with one another, give them those 3 things and set those milestones. I feel like I said a lot, but that's what I'm doing with the peer review. And I'm setting those reminders throughout the week. And it sounds like a lot, but they're working together and they're really picking each other apart in a positive way. They're redoing their video towards the end and then seeing, hey, you took what I said, you took my advice and you implemented it. That's really cool. And I did take your advice. I like what you said. And I see that it helped me. So that's what I've been doing with that feature.
So you mentioned how the groups make it more of an intimate space so they don't feel as pressured. Do you see them having a lot more conversations back and forth within that because of the groups?
I do. I've noticed, because originally I didn't do that. And I will say it's because, I'll just be honest, I didn't know I could. So at the beginning, I didn't realize I could do that. And I thought, gosh, I'm failing somehow. Why are they not engaging with one another like I thought they would? What am I doing so wrong? And then I just went to a training session. Who knew? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. And ever since then, and I broke them down to the groups, it's been fantastic. They're not afraid to do it in that smaller space, which makes sense, because when I work in a small group, I don't have as much anxiety, and I will, discuss all day with people. But in a bigger group, I'll be like, that's okay. You go talk about it. I'll just sit over here.
Now, Kelly, you mentioned this is 100% online. So this is not a course where you're meeting via Zoom or in the class in the middle of the week. Right. Is there any obstacles there in having it 100% online?
No, not. I mean, I would say the only obstacles we ever have online is just internet, because I do live in a very remote area of Iowa where students typically have internet issues or broadband issues. But other than that, that I would say that's the only obstacle.
Okay. So now, Mitch, you teach a very similar class at Mercer County, but yours, instead of it being completely asynchronous, yours is more synchronous, and that you're meeting in the middle of the week. So what type of changes are you seeing in that type of setup for you in this type of assignment?
Right. My classification at our school, as opposed to being considered an online class, even though I call it public speaking online, is, excuse me, is they classify it as remote, right? Which is a term that came up during COVID when everybody was remote. But so we have a synchronous session once a week for each section of the online public speaking class. So the first thing I need to point out is it's a 10-week accelerated course. So it doesn't go the full 14 weeks that others do, that our own other sections do. And one of the advantages to that is, we do get to build that core cohort, I think, a little more quickly in the live online environment with that Zoom conference. So it's interesting with what Kelly pointed out, because I kind of do it in reverse, in that after that first initial meeting, their first video, which is either an introduction or a little bit of a personal challenge, it's a very, very short speech. That is up for the entire class, and I asked them to respond to as many as they possibly can. And to my surprise, they do respond to a lot of them. And again, they're very, very short speeches. They're only about a minute and a half. So they're able to do that. But then when they get into their slightly more serious, slightly longer speeches, I do exactly what Kelly does. I put them into small groups, 3 to 4 people per group. So they have a little less anxiety, I hope, and a little less work, quite frankly, right? Than trying to watch all these speeches and randomly select who should I watch. They just know they need to critique each person in their group. And I ask them, especially in that first critique in the first group, to remember that, hey, we're all getting started. You know, I don't put it in this terminology, but I often pitch them the idea of the compliment sandwich, right? Start with something that you like, that you identify with, and then get into the critique and end with something that you thought was good about it. And they're usually very good. I must say that it's, as far as speech critiques go, that they've been pretty forthcoming and pretty well balanced in their responses.
So can you tell me a little bit more, Mitch, about your instructions? You said, you know, you tell them specific things to do at specific intervals.
Yes.
And how does that change throughout the semester with your instructions?
Well, it parallels the rubric. So one of the things that I found out that students really didn't like through working with different software and a different textbook was that they don't want to feel like they're being graded by other students, right? They want to be graded by their instructor and nobody else. And I totally get that. So what I do is I take a few selections out of the rubric, I put them into discussion prompts, and I say, you know, offer encouragement and feedback as you identify things that you'd like to discuss, but make sure you hit all these prompts. And there aren't a lot of prompts. There's much more in the rubric, obviously, but there's just select prompts about eye contact, about clarity in articulation, things like that. So I'll give them prompts in the description right in Harmonize. And like Kelly, I also like to use milestones. So they have their post due by a certain point, and then they have to have comments for, you know, 2 people, 3 people. I had an interesting thing happen this semester in that we very early on had a few students drop the course. So they're still, when I did the numbers, I said, okay, respond to 3 students. And they started emailing me saying, I only see 2 students in my group. That's okay. I'm not going to hold you responsible for watching something that doesn't exist, you know. So if I set up Harmonize for automatic grading, don't worry, I'll go back and tweak that. No worries.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both Kelly and Mitch, for that insight.
I'm
go ahead.
Sorry, there was one thing I forgot to mention. So in there, I have 4 formal speeches that they post, and on the first 2, they'll do the typical written critiques. But when they get to their heavier informative speech, where it's research-based, there's a lot more criteria. One of the things that I'm asking the students to do this semester, and I'm testing it out for the first time this semester, is instead of writing their critiques, I'm asking them to prepare notes and deliver their critique like a speech, and that they're going to use the video tool in Harmonize so they can very easily just click that and give their feedback to their fellow students in a video.
So almost like a retort speech. So
yes.
they're yeah. Oh, that's.
I'll let you know how that goes.
So one thing that I will say, and we kind of had this conversation prior, is a new feature of Harmonize. We mentioned that we're always willing to listen to our users and update features. You guys have not got a chance to use this, but you both mentioned the rubrics. You know, this will probably be a big time saver for you guys to have the rubrics now integrated within the assignments. So maybe we'll bring you back later and have you report on that once you guys start using that more. So all right, well, let me go ahead here, and we're going to go back and look at another example here with Tanya. Technical communications discussion. Now, Tanya, I have to admit, when you first told me about this class, and you said your requirement was 12 comments a week, and you were getting an
12.
average of 20 comments a week per student. I said, what is she doing? You got, what in the world? But once you explained it to me, it made so much sense. So I'd love for you to tell us all more about how you're designing this course.
So for this one, I wanted the discussions. This is an asynchronous course, and I wanted the discussions to mimic what we do in the classroom. So I am not requiring them to quote directly from the book. I don't lock the discussion before they can join in. Because what I found is that students were saying the same thing for that initial discussion, and then their responses were very shallow. So what I have them do, I assign every student a chapter, and they present the chapter, and I post the student presentations to the discussion. So students then read the chapter, watch the student presentation, and then they start discussing. And each presentation is supposed to have jumping off points, so questions that they ask at the end to get the discussion going. But students start wherever they want to. So if they want to post an initial idea, they can. If they want to just jump in on what somebody else has posted, they can click and jump in. The discussion opens on Wednesday. That's when I start my module week. It opens on Wednesday, and that's when the chapter presentations are posted. And then the first milestone is Friday. They have to have 4 posts by Friday. Then they have to have an additional 4 posts on Monday and an additional 4 posts on Tuesday. So, like Mitch was saying, if I have the built-in Harmonize grading, I can always go in, because if they post on Saturday or Sunday, the auto grading doesn't always count that as the Monday posting. And so I just go in and count up a few to make sure they get whatever they were supposed to get. But students are engaging so actively because they don't have the responses that I've been getting are that the discussion is not stilted, because they can see what people have already said and they build on those ideas, and then they start their own thread if they had a different idea that wasn't already brought up. And so they're required to respond 20 times, but or 12 times, but on average it's 20, and usually even more than that. The responses only have to be 20 words, so I don't require them to write a novel, but most of them post more than 20 words. Most of the chat is pretty lengthy. I encourage them to play around with all the tools of Harmonize. So I get videos, I get some students just do audio, but I've had students who have said that they like the option. If they feel like typing, they type. If they don't, they can record themselves, or they can just do audio. So they like to play around with the different ways to talk to each other. And then it's increased the out of class communication. So they feel like they're really building a community and they're making friends online. And so then they are communicating more outside of the discussions about all kinds of things, like this class, but also other classes they have. So I feel more successful that I'm building a real community instead of just having a stilted discussion where they have to quote from different parts of the book. And I really liked that students are playing around with different things. And I love, one thing I really like about Harmonize is you can see the different threads very easily because it starts with a new card. And so students, before they can post anything, they have to see what everybody else has already posted. So that forces them to get engaged before they start talking. And they'll call each other out. You know, if somebody starts repeating, they're like, you need to add this to the other thread because that's what we're already talking about. But they do it in a very fun way. They're not being mean to each other. But a student only messes up one time before they really start paying attention. So when I look at the analytics of engagement, I can see that students are really paying attention to what their peers have said. They're not just looking for 4 short posts that they can quickly respond to get their 4 posts in. They're watching all the videos, they're reading all the comments, and so they're really actively engaged.
it's amazing that you're getting these types of results. And we actually had a conversation about this last week, that I think really that 20 word minimum count really makes a difference. Because when you go in, I've seen a lot of instructors say, I want 250 word post and 100 word comment, or 500 word post.
3 times from the book.
Yeah, it becomes so overwhelming. They almost feel restricted to be at the very minimum, and only do, you know, the one post and 2 comments that's in that assignment. Whereas this really opens it up to where they don't feel that pressure, almost, I guess you would say.
Right. The other thing that I think really helps is that the students who are presenting, I make them student facilitators. And so part of their grade is to facilitate the discussion. And so because everybody in the class knows that their peers are facilitating and that they will later be asked to facilitate, I think that's added encouragement, added incentive to fully participate, because they want to help each other out. And so the student facilitators are given this second set of instructions that David is showing right now. And when you put them in as facilitators, I'm using the stock instructions that Harmonize comes up with, but you can customize this however you want. And it only shows up for the student facilitators, so they know exactly what's expected of them as facilitators. And each student knows that they're going to be doing that once a week. And I used this just in the Canvas discussions. I required student facilitators, but I always had to send a separate email and let them know, and then remind them, you need to go in and facilitate. And Harmonize just puts it all in one spot, where it makes it very easy for the students to see what they need to do. And then it tracks everything. It tracks their facilitating, it tracks their posting. I like that they can see exactly what they're doing. They get reminders. Remember, you have to post on Friday. Remember, you have to post on Monday. So since we're requiring them to come in more often, it's nice that they're getting reminders.
So now, are you the 2 students that send the video prior to the assignment, that present and then start the conversation, are those the same ones that you're assigning as student facilitators, or are you using? Yeah, okay. So they're
students. So if they present the chapters, then they're responsible, because they're the content experts. And so they're the ones that are responsible for keeping the discussion going, clarifying, answering questions. And then I only jump in if they're not able to do that. So I'm engaged a lot in the discussion, and I will join just as the friendly person. But it's kind of nice in the standard discussion threads, whenever I jump in, all focus turns to me as the instructor. And so everybody just starts responding to me. In this format, I'm just one of the many voices. And so I get buried in the shuffle, and that's how I want it to be, because I just want to be a part of the discussion. And then I can start, my own thread if it's something important. As the teacher, I need to say this, but usually I don't need to do that. I can just be an additional voice in the rich discussion that they're already having.
Awesome. That's amazing. We did have a couple of questions come through, so I wanted to jump on these before we head into the next section. We had the question: do professors evaluating speeches provide PDFs via Harmonize? So I'm assuming that question is maybe a PDF of the rubric is what they're asking. So do you guys provide a rubric when you're for the assignment or for the class for what you're grading on beforehand?
Yes, for one of the speeches where they need to be very specific in their critiques, I have a PDF of the critique rubric, which now that Harmonize is being able to produce rubrics, I'll probably do away with the PDFs eventually and just do that.
Kelly, are you also providing those?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing.
Okay. And Tanya, do you use rubrics in your course, or?
I do, but not in my discussions. The discussions are just
Okay.
how active they are.
Okay. There you go. The other question, Tanya, this might be for you. How do you tackle chapters not read by students or drop students?
So there's normally more students than I have chapters that they read. And so the chapters that come later in the semester, I assign 2 students to each one. That way, if students do drift away, stop attending or drop, there's usually a backup, but I still make it an individual assignment. So if they have, for this discussion, if we had 2 students assigned to chapter 16, they would each do their own, and there would just be 2 separate discussion or 2 separate presentations on chapter 16. And then both students would be assigned as facilitators of chapter 16. If I do have a completely empty chapter, then I just post the presentation and do the facilitating as the instructor. I've used Harmonize twice, 2 semesters. And before that, I had lots of people who drifted away. Not lots, but I would say 10-15% that either stopped coming or dropped completely. Since using Harmonize, I don't lose students, and I don't know, I've changed other things too, but I think students are watching out for each other since we're really building a community. I know that if somebody's not showing up, I'll see in a discussion, where's David? He hasn't been on here for a while. I'm going to text him. And so they're calling each other, and when they get a communication from their peers, they're more likely to re-engage. So they're really building a community through this way of discussing, which has helped a lot. So I haven't had the issue of them leaving. I have had a few that have had issues where they couldn't do their presentation, and so I just fill in for them. But that's how I handle it.
As a employee of Harmonize, that's awesome to hear that you have students not dropping since you started using Harmonize. I'm sure there might be some anecdotal there, but we'll just go with it being Harmonize, right? I'm sure Eric loves to hear that.
Well, speaking of anecdotal, I'll just give one more plug as well, and that's just for one of my text-based discussions, not the video critiques that we were talking about before. When I switched from, unlike my colleagues here from the other institutions, we don't use Canvas, we use Blackboard. Right. Blackboard has a notoriously clunky discussion board. And I noticed elevated engagement the very first semester. I used the same discussion in Harmonize that I used in Blackboard. And I used to just shake my head as I gave zeros to people who just didn't participate. And I had almost 100% participation the very first semester I moved it over to Harmonize.
Wow.
So I want to just add to that from what Mitch said. I've used this same format for years where they, get on and it's open. They just discuss however they want. But it's the same thing. When we started using Harmonize, they can see exactly what their tracking is. I think they love the audio and the video. And I think that's what's really making the difference. And I also like the view where they see the different starts of the threads because it's cards that they turn over. So it's like, I'm going to pick this one and start reading this thread. Students have told me that when they just see the long list of text, it feels overwhelming. I don't want to read all of that. But when it's just one card at a time that they're flipping over and looking at that discussion thread, they look at all of them. They still do just as much reading and watching, but it doesn't feel as overwhelming. But I've noticed a major difference using the exact same design, but switching it from standard Canvas discussion to Harmonize has made a huge difference.
Great segue here, because one of the things I think also that makes the difference with Harmonize is the feel and the look of Harmonize. It looks and feels more like social media that they're used to. And Kelly, when you told me the other week, well, it's probably a month ago now, that you were doing TikToks in Harmonize, I went, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do TikToks in Harmonize. And you're like, no, you can. Yeah, sure enough, you can. And I was just amazed. I had more fun creating this this example, being able to Yeah, Marcus, I'm doing research for the webinar. I'm on TikTok. That was, so tell us a little bit more about how you're incorporating TikTok into your assignments.
Well, hopefully it doesn't go away. Well, I teach an informative, many of us do, informative speech unit, And so one of the preparation assignments for that is for them to do a quick snippet speech of their informative speech. So like I give an example of a book talk, if you've ever been on TikTok, you've seen book talk. And so that's what I call it, like do a quick book talk. So they have to go out and make a TikTok of their informative speech. And it's just so fun. They do this quick, sometimes hilarious version of their informative speech via TikTok, and they layer music over it and images and backgrounds. And it's so engaging. And they just have a great time with it, and they just upload it right on here. And then they all just have a blast watching it because they're on TikTok. All of them are. Now there will be a handful of them that don't have it. And I just allow them just to use Harmonize's video, creators. Some of them do their own version of TikTok on there. And one of my students, she did an informative speech with her cats. It was, I think, my most favorite speech of all time. And it was so funny. She just kept lifting them up and showing everyone just repeatedly. It is great. She should be a comedian. But yeah, so if they don't have it, Harmonize, you can video record on there. There are workarounds, but the majority of them do have TikTok. And when they saw that assignment, it was just there. It was, I think I could hear them from like towns away going, yay! And but it is a great way to work on engagement, to work on media. And how is my media working with what I'm saying? Is it overpowering me? Is it overpowering my message? Is my message still getting across? And then I don't do the groups in this one because they all love this one and they all want to see what everybody did, and comment back and forth. And this one is just a huge hit. So that's what I've been doing. And then are you going to show the poll?
Yep.
Okay. So I use polls a lot for different reasons. One way is, in order to create a poll, you have to know how to ask a good question. So to get good results from your poll, like, hey, was my intro engaging? Like you have to ask that, right? Like, what if you say, how should I begin my speech? With a joke, with an anecdote, with a personal story? Or was my joke effective? Do you think I'm funny? Etc. What if you didn't phrase those right and your responses are like, meh, So I asked them to create a 3-question poll based upon, whatever feedback we're looking for, depending on whatever speech we're doing. So for this informative speech, was my message clear? Did you catch my, the meaning or whatever? So the students post their little TikTok, and then they have to have their poll on there. So they have their TikTok and then they have their poll. So students watch it and then they all vote in their poll. And it's just so much fun because then you get to see the results. Everybody votes, you can see the poll results. And I use the polls on a lot. So students create their polls, and they can get immediate feedback, not only in comments, but from everybody else. So what if you don't comment? What if you don't go through and comment on everybody, but maybe you go through and you vote in everybody's polls? Because sometimes you don't want to take the time to comment on everybody, but maybe you're going to go vote on everybody's things. So you're still getting feedback that way, but they're also learning a lesson. And so in your introduction, so your speeches, what did you like best? Did you like it in my speech when I told a story? Did you like the version of my speech when I told a joke? Or did you like it when I gave a statistic? Because for that, for one speech, we do 3 different introductions and they give 3 different styles. And they'll be like, yeah, you know what? Your joke did not land. Did not like it. Or you know what? The statistic, it was really good. Start with that. That was the one that I liked. So they get feedback that way. Sometimes people, sometimes we find that our classmates are not as good at giving feedback and they can get a little more information in that poll. So So I'm finding that the students really like to click that button. I'm using the polls.
That's awesome. So you mentioned, using Harmonize because the students need to know different types of media that they're working with. This is online courses, right? So a lot of times their speeches are not just about what the words they say, but the music and the background. Mitch, you teach a very interesting course as part of the communications platform, where it's about the technical side of audio. You can probably explain that a little bit better than me, and how you're using Harmonize in that course. Why don't you tell us first, start out a little bit more about that course itself?
Sure. I'm in my lab right now. You can see the little high-tech mixer there behind me. So I teach a course in digital audio production. It's an introductory course. We get into the basics of recording, editing, and multi-tracking audio. So that course culminates, it pulls together a bunch of skills along the course of the semester. So the final semester, we either do a recording session with Mercer County Community College's jazz band, or release elements of the jazz band, or if the schedule doesn't work to record the jazz band, we have tracks from a band in Lexington, Kentucky, called the Lexington Lab Band. And can I do a screen share real quick?
Yeah.
So let me see. I think I have this. It's not seeing my Firefox opened. Let me just see if I can get that. I have, it's saying it's unknown, so I guess that's not going to work.
All
I
right.
just wanted to show, you can go back. Yeah. So what I was going to show is Lexington Lab Band has their own YouTube channel. Their mission is to record classic rock songs as close to the original recordings as possible. They just started this as sort of a hobby. They're all working stiffs, but they're good musicians. And when no one could go out and see live music during COVID, their website absolutely exploded. And they had fans all around the country, all around the world, really. So I contracted with them to get all the final tracks to each of their songs for 6 different songs. So what I found was, even though I had archival recordings of our jazz band recordings, without the students being able to actually be part of the recording session and see what was going on, it was hard for them to grasp how to mix that song. So with the Lexington Lab Band, if we didn't get a chance to actually have them be part of the recording session, what they could do is they could watch the music video, which is simply a performance video. So there's different shots of the drummer, of the bassist, of the vocalist, of the guitarist, and they could see how that song was put together. And then my mission for them is not to reproduce it like the original, like the Lexington Lab Band strives to do. You've got the individual tracks free of effects. You put that song together how you want it done. You reformulate that song, bring your own creativity, bring your own use of effects, and make that sound the way you think it should be done. And to give you an example, if anybody's old enough to remember the Cars, they did a song called You Might Think, which is a very synth pop 80s sounding song. And I actually had one student who took out all the synthesizers, multiplied the guitars, and made it sound like a grungy garage band doing the song. And it sounded awesome. And I sent those mixes to the Lexington Lab Band, and they said, "This is wild. We love this." So what I had the issue with it during COVID, and now with our tight schedules after COVID, is how do we share that? How do this is a classroom course. This is a face-to-face class. And in many of our projects, we take a class session, we play a lot of the projects, and we do a critique session where they talk about what they liked, what they thought might be done differently, where they can ask questions. Well, the Mixdown project where they create their song happens right at the end of the semester. And I didn't want to just let it go in that vacuum where someone creates a song, posts it for me to grade, and that's all they get is my feedback. So I used Harmonize So all they need to do is post their MP3, which is a little, it's a little 3.5-minute song. So it doesn't take much room. They post their MP3. And then again, I like to make groups for this, just so they don't feel overwhelmed by having the whole class, even though it's only a class of about 13 people. And they give critiques. They've already been exposed to the way we treat critiques for audio projects. I have this specific rubric that I use. The rubric is posted as a reminder, but they're all well aware of it by that point. And they post really meaningful critiques. I mean, I go back and I read these critiques and I see how they talk about the nuances of the mix, or, you use this effect here. What if you would try that? And it's really been very successful. As an end of the semester, one more thing you got to do, but they go in there and they do it.
I would love you as a professor. That's right up my alley. Classic rock. Thank you so much. I think that is a very, very, and it's very unique assignment. And I also love, this is not an online class. This is an in-person class. So it kind of shows creativity outside of being online. Tanya, I wanted to bring up, you'd mentioned to me that when you first started using Harmonize, you did see an initial uptick in what they were doing compared to old discussion boards. But I really was intrigued on how you kind of refined it from last semester to this semester, getting students' input to get as another part of getting their interactions up. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
So because we were a pilot program, I let the students know we're a pilot program. I'm learning this, you're learning this. And so we did polls about every 3 weeks. I didn't want to bombard them with polls, but about every 3 weeks, I would post a poll that would ask a specific question about what they liked, what they didn't like. And I would base that on student feedback, what they were kind of chatting about, what I was seeing in their discussions, as well as things they had emailed to me. And it was interesting because I was posting the polls, but I noticed that students in their own discussions were also, because I told them they could engage any way they wanted to. So they're posting videos and audio and typing. And some students were posting their own polls about different things that they were learning about. What's your favorite part of the chapter? And they would, create their own polls. And so we had all of this engagement. So through the polls that I would do every 3 weeks, we kept refining and making the discussions better and better and better. And then this year, I started doing the same thing, telling students we're still in a pilot. It's a new program for all of us. But the students, about, the second poll that I posted, they were like, do we really need to do this? It doesn't seem like we need to make changes. And so it was interesting that we had refined it last semester and the students just liked what we were doing this semester. So now I've told them that they can create their own polls this semester, whatever they want. And so their polls are not about Harmonize. Their polls are about the chapter discussions. So students will post a poll. Which chapter did you find the most engaging from the last 3 weeks? Chapter 6, chapter 8, chapter 12. What was your favorite part? And it's fascinating to see how they're engaging on their own, creating these big polls for the whole class that are outside of the discussions simply because they can. So they're creating more work for themselves, or I would see it as more work for themselves, but it shows me that they are really engaged rather than checking the boxes to get the work done.
Yeah, I think that's the polls seem to be something that until I really met with you and Kelly and Mitch, it was kind of okay. This is almost like a quiz. That's the way I looked at the polls. It's just another element to maybe have some engagement, but I mean, really, it is a way to get them more in tune, build that community, have them share ideas. It it can really go way beyond just a simple poll.
Right.
That's really great. So we got about 10 more minutes. I do want to get to this last topic. Until about a month ago, I had no clue what Pathos, Logos, and Ethos was, and got educated very quickly about that. So another tool, whether it's Harmonize, or maybe if you're out there and you don't have Harmonize and you're watching this webinar, there's other tools out there, Pathos and Perusal, that offer PDF social annotations. But Kelly, you mentioned to me one of your all-time favorite speeches was Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, talking at the Senate. Can you give us a little bit more about how you came up with this idea for using social annotation in a public speaking class, I guess?
Well, I'm a composition teacher first, so I'm always thinking about reading through articles and looking for arguments and just nitpicking them. And so I thought, well, why can't we do that why can't we look for rhetoric, in a speech class too? I think we should. And so, I watch a lot of videos, and so I wanted us to watch the video, but then I also wanted us to do it and I wanted us to break it down in PDF form, because sometimes, we hear it, but then we just need to see it too, to really be looking at the rhetorical, to be looking at where did these moves occur? Because, when we're seeing it, when we're hearing it, we'll lean into the pathos and the emotion a little more. But when we're reading through it, we can connect, I think, more with the logos and the ethos. So what I like about the annotation, if anyone hasn't used it, is that everybody can just have this discussion right here on the document. I use this all of the time and pretty much all of my classes. I actually use this more in my composition class than I use the discussion thread. We use annotations constantly. And I have found that students talk back and forth on here more than they do in the discussion thread in my comp class. But it's become one of my most favorite things, because we can just, like you see over here, we can add people, we can pick it apart. I can give them the instructions. This is what, right up here. This is what we're looking for. We are looking for these 3 things. We're going to listen to it. And now we're going to, what is the difference in listening? What did you notice? The difference in listening and then reading. And let's look for these moments. And it's just interesting to me, not only to see what did they say, what are the different, to see what they think are the differences from hearing and seeing, and see them talk about it on the side and see how they are affected from here's what I see when I just heard it, and now here's what I see when I'm reading it,
Mm-hmm.
And then here's where I'm going to look for the rhetorical strategies in both. And just to see them pick it apart over here and then on the article. And I don't know if that would happen as much just in the regular discussion thread. And so it's been really fascinating, and it's been a great tool to use right here. And I can pop in and do it too with them, but I don't do it as much. They do it themselves. I can just kind
That's
of,
awesome.
yeah, it's been really neat.
Yeah, this tool, I was just speaking to an instructor earlier, and she said, I didn't even know that. I've been using Harmonize for 2 years, and I didn't even know this was available. I didn't know that we had PDF annotation.
Yeah, I love it. I like it better. I use Canvas, and there is an annotation tool in Canvas, but this works much easier than the one in Canvas. I will say this one's easier to navigate, and it pops right into SpeedGrader very easily. I really like this one.
So I did see another question here. I wanted to bring up real quickly. There was a question. So how do you correct for student polls without watching the video? Does that happen? So I think what the question is, do you see where people are just going through and clicking on the polls, and maybe they're not actually engaging in the videos?
Well, those are the students are gaining from the polls,
Right.
So I haven't really, if they are not because I'm reading for the comments, and the polls are mostly the students are creating the polls and asking the advice, and I am reading the comments and checking out who, kind of like what Tanya said. I'm looking for engagement and how they've interacted with each other, but I am grading on the questions that the student created in those polls. Like, how did they ask that question? How well was that question formed? And are they going to get any good feedback from that form? But from that question, and then can I see from the question that they asked, did they take any of that feedback, and can I see it then in their presentation? So I guess that's how I use it.
That makes sense. I think that's all the questions I see in the chat for right now. If I missed anything, I'm trying to go back and just see if I missed anything. Just thank you all, Tanya, Mitch, and Kelly. I've learned so much and gained so many ideas. I meet with instructors fairly often, and I love passing on knowledge I learned from other instructors that are doing great things. And I can tell you, I've ripped off all three of you to plug, to give ideas and pass on knowledge to other instructors, and they're always very appreciative. The mixing assignment and the TikToks and just the 20 comment per student, all of those are just so impressive, and everything that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for sharing. We of course are going to have this up on our website at harmonizedlearning.com for others to see down the road, in case there's new communications, public speaking, professional communications instructors out there that are looking for some ideas for teaching. They'll have that. So thank you guys again so much for doing that. I will do a little bit of a plug here. We do have another couple of webinars coming up. Tomorrow, you still have time to sign up for this. Marcus, our CEO, will be doing a webinar called AI Next Steps. Looking for feedback on student coaching with a rubric. It's another feature that we have possibly coming down the road. So if you want to jump in there and be able to give your feedback and let Marcus hear your thoughts on that, sign up for that webinar. We also have teaching digital arts online. We have two very innovative instructors. Kelly actually knows Holly DeGroat. I hope I'm saying that correctly. She's at the ICCOC. What school is she at, Kelly?
She's at NCC, so Northern Iowa Community College. Northwest Iowa Community College.
Northwest Iowa Community College. And then she does graphic design. And then Brian Miller from the University of Michigan, he does a class creating art through programming. So computer programming that's creating art, and it's not AI. It's very interesting. So I encourage you guys to sign up for that. And then on May 7th, we have Teaching History Online with Betty Jo Harris, and as well as Stephanie Sellers. We'll have some more coming up. I know we're looking at algebra, teaching algebra online, and then we're also looking at foreign languages. So should have some new webinars coming up here really soon. Hope everyone got a chance to participate in the Padlet. I'll go look at that when we're done here and send out some gift cards. But again, thank you to the panelists. Thank you for everyone who attended, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. I hope we covered the things you wanted us to cover.
I was getting a little nervous at the end. I was like, do we have enough time? And I think we had. I was like, okay, I think we're right enough time that we can get it in.
Perfect.
Yeah, couldn't have planned it better.
Yeah.
3:59 for goodness sakes.
Yeah.
Right.
And still got to plug the other upcoming webinars. So that's good.
And I jotted down a few notes myself from my colleagues.
I think that's one of the most interesting things that's come through this webinar series that I'm doing is every time I talk to an instructor,